It's Christmas Eve, 1945. A family in a small town called Fayetteville, West Virginia is getting ready for bed. The war just ended a few months ago. Everyone's happy. Everyone's together. Well, almost everyone. 9 of the 10 Sodder kids are home that night. The oldest boy, Joe, is still off in the army. By 1:30 in the morning, the house is on fire. And within 45 minutes, the whole home collapses into the basement. Two parents and four kids make it out alive. Five kids, ages 5 to 14, don't. But here's the strange part. When the fire's finally out, there are no bodies, no bones, nothing. And that one detail is going to haunt this family and puzzle investigators for the rest of their lives. This is the story of Sodder children. Okay, so let's start with who were the Sodders. So let's back up and meet this family first. George Sodder was born in Italy on the island of Sardinia back in 1895, and he came to America when he was just 13 years old. He worked hard, first on railroads in Pennsylvania, then as a truck driver, and eventually built his own coal hauling trucking business in West Virginia. He married another Italian immigrant, Jenny, and together they had 10 kids, and by 1945, they were a respected, hard-working family in their town. Now, here's something important about George. He was not shy about his political views. He hated the fascist dictator Mussolini. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And he said so loudly in public and that mattered a lot because the local Italian American community was split. Some people supported Mussolini. Some people really, really didn't like a man like George speaking out against him. And that tension, that's going to matter a lot later in this story. In the weeks before the fire, some strange things happened. Little things that probably felt off at the time, but looking back feels like a pattern. Like, first, a life insurance salesman came to the house. George turned him down and the guy got weirdly aggressive about it. He told George his house was going to go up in smoke and that his kids would be destroyed because of his anti-Mussolini comments. That's not a normal thing to say to someone. That's a threat. Then, a stranger showed up at the house, said he was looking for work. He walked around back, pointed at the fuse boxes, and told George they were going to cause a fire, which was odd because George had just had the whole house rewired and the power company had already inspected it and said everything was fine. And on top of that, some of the older Sodder kids noticed a car parked along the road near their house more than once with people inside just watching the younger kids walk home from school. None of this proved anything on its own, but put together, it's a lot of coincidences pointing in the same direction. Now, let's walk through that night because details matters here. The family is having a nice evening. Marion, the 17-year-old daughter, bought little gifts for her younger siblings with money from her job. The two youngest boys, Morris and Louis, get permission to stay up little later than normal, like as long as they do their evening chores first, like locking up the animals, and by 10 p.m. the younger kids head up to their bedrooms in the attic. George and the two older boys, John and George Jr., are already asleep. Jenny takes the baby, 2-year-old Sylvia, up to bed too. At 12:30 a.m. the phone rings. Jenny answers and it's a woman she doesn't recognize asking for someone Jenny's never heard of. And in the background, Jenny can hear glass clinking and people laughing like some kind of a party. Jenny tells her she's got the wrong number. The woman laughs in this strange way and just hangs up. Jenny notices something's off downstairs, like the lights are still on, the front door's unlocked, the curtains aren't closed. Normally the kids handle that before bed. She figures they just forgot, so she locks up, turns off the lights and goes back to sleep. At 1 a.m. she wakes up again, this time to a loud bang on the roof, then a rolling sound like something hit the roof and rolled off. She doesn't think much of it, goes back to sleep, and half an hour later she wakes up a third time, this time to smoke filling the bedroom. Jenny finds the fire starting near George's office, right by the fuse box and the phone line. She wakes George. George wakes the older boys. Everyone who can get out gets out. George, Jenny, Marion, baby Sylvia, John, and George Jr. But the staircase to the attic, where the 5 younger kids are sleeping, is already on fire. George is yelling up into the stairwell. Nobody answers. So now it's about trying to reach them from outside. And this is where things get almost unbelievable because everything that could go wrong does. George keeps a ladder propped against the house, specifically for reaching the upstairs windows. It's gone. Just not there. It's found later hidden almost 75 feet away at the bottom of a small hill. George has two work trucks parked right there. The plan is to back one up to the house and climb on top of it to reach the windows. Both trucks had run completely fine day before. Now, neither one is starting. There is also a rain barrel kept specifically for emergencies like this. It's frozen solid. And when Marion runs to the neighbor's house to call the fire department, she can't get an operator to pick up. A driver passing by tries calling from a nearby bar. Same thing, no operator. He ends up just driving straight into the town to find the fire chief in person. And by the time the fire department actually shows up, it's 8 in the morning. The fire started around 1:30 a.m. 6.5 hours later, the house is long gone by then. It collapsed into the basement in under 45 minutes. Now, here's the detail that changes everything. The fire chief checks the ash pit that morning looking for remains. He finds nothing. No bones. Official rules the fire accidental, bad wiring, and 5 days later, death certificates are issued for all 5 missing kids. But Jenny Sodder does not accept that, and she does something that's honestly kind of remarkable for a grieving mother in 1945. She starts doing her own science. She burns beef bones, pork bones, chicken bones in open fires at home just to see what happens, and every time the bones shower, but they don't disappear. She talks to a crematorium operator who tells her flat out, human bones don't just vanish in a house fire. You need sustained heat somewhere around 1800 to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 to 3 hours to fully destroy a human skeleton. The Sodder house burned for 45 minutes. Meanwhile, other stuff in the basement, metal furniture, tin roofing, household appliances, all of that survived, recognizable in the wreckage. So if metal furniture can survive, but 5 human skeletal apparently vanished completely, something doesn't add up. Two more things make this fire look less like an accident and more like something staged. First, the phone line. Officials said it burned in the fire, which is why nobody could call for help right away, but a repair technician actually inspected it and found the wire hadn't burned at all. It had been cut deliberately with wire shears 14 feet up a utility pole. A local man was arrested for stealing some equipment from the Sodder property around that time, and he admitted to cutting a wire, but he claimed he thought it was just a power line. Whatever the full story is, the official police records on that guy later just disappeared from the files. Second, and this one is wild, 2 years after the fire in 1947, a local minister told the Sodder something Fire Chief Morris had confided to him, that Morris had actually found a human organ in the ashes on Christmas morning and quietly buried it in a box on the property without telling anyone. George Sodder and a private investigator dug it up, took it straight to a funeral director for examination. It was beef liver. Fresh, never been anywhere near a fire. Under questioning, Morris admitted it. He had planted it, hoping it would convince the Sodder their kids had died in the fire, so they would stop pushing for more investigation. Like, let that sink in for a second. A fire chief planted fake evidence to make grieving parents stop looking for their children. And here's where it gets even stranger. A few days after the fire, George bulldozed several feet of dirt over the basement, planning to turn the spot into a memorial garden for his kids. Well-meaning, but it also buried whatever evidence was left under fresh soil. And in 1949, 4 years later, the family brought in a pathologist from Washington, D.C. to properly dig through the site. They found some old coins, a partly burned dictionary, some metal pieces, and a small number of human bone fragments, specifically some vertebrae from the lower spine. These went to the Smithsonian Institution for analysis, and their findings were genuinely strange. The vertebrae belonged to someone between 16 and 22 years old, and the oldest missing Sodder child, Morris, was 14, and the bones showed absolutely no signs of ever being exposed to fire. Experts basically said this doesn't make sense. You can't have 5 kids' skeletons vanish without a trace and then have one unburned bone from someone older turn up in the ashes. Their best guess? The bone came from the dirt George has used to fill in the basement, dirt that had actually been hauled in from a cemetery near a town called Mount Hope. So even that piece of evidence turned out to be a coincidence, not a clue. In 1950, the state officially closed its investigation. The FBI had briefly looked into it as a possible kidnapping case too, but closed their file after 2 years, saying they didn't have any solid leads. For the rest of their lives, George and Jenny refused to believe their kids died that night. And honestly, once you hear some of the reports that came in, it's not hard to understand why. A woman watching the fire from the road that night said she saw children looking out the window of a car driving away. A motel operator about 50 miles from Fayetteville said she served breakfast to some kids matching their description, and the very next morning, there was a car outside with Florida plates. A hotel worker in Charleston, West Virginia said she saw four of the missing kids about a week after Christmas with two men and two women who looked Italian. She tried to talk to the kids, and one of the men, they got hostile, started speaking fast in Italian, and the group left. George even traveled to New York City after seeing a newspaper photo of a ballet class, convinced one of the girls looked just like his daughter Betty. Her guardian wouldn't let him talk to her, and the family put up a big billboard on the highway with the kid's photo and a reward. First $5,000, later raised to 10,000, and kept it up for decades, hoping somebody could come forward. And then, in 1968, 23 years after the fire, Jenny gets an envelope in the mail. No written address, postmark from a town in Kentucky. Inside is a photo of a young man, mid-20s. On the back, someone had written this: Louis was the son who would have been about that age if he had survived, and when the family looked closely at the photo, dark curly hair, dark eyes, a certain tilt in the eyebrow, it really did look like him. They hired a private investigator to go to Kentucky to look into it, and he took their money and never sent a report. Just stopped responding entirely. Scared that going public might put Louis in danger if he really was out there, the family added the adult photo to their billboard but never revealed where the picture had come from. They never got an answer. So, all these years later, there are really two ways to look at it. Theory one, it really was just an accidental fire, faulty wiring, a tragic accident, and the fire was hot enough and chaotic enough that the remains were destroyed beyond recognition. That's the official story. The problem is this theory doesn't hold up well against the evidence. Wood fires just don't get hot enough, long enough to fully destroy human bones. It doesn't explain the cut phone wire, it doesn't explain the missing ladder or the truck that wouldn't start or the frozen water barrel. Like, too many things went wrong all at once, all in ways that happened to block every possible rescue attempt. Theory number two, this was arson meant to cover up a kidnapping. Someone set the fire maybe as retaliation for George's political views, and the children were taken before or during the fire, not killed in it. This theory actually explains a lot more. The threats beforehand, the stranger asking about the fuse box, the car watching the kids walk home, the cut phone wire, the hidden ladder, the trucks that mysteriously wouldn't start, the rubber object that hit the roof, which George believed was some kind of incendiary device, and which a bus driver said he saw people throwing into the roof that night. And of course, no bodies ever anywhere. The weak point in this theory is just, how do you pull off kidnapping 5 kids from an upstairs bedroom quietly in the middle of the night without anyone downstairs noticing? That's a lot of coordination. Neither theory fits perfectly, but the physical evidence lines up a lot better with something being staged than with a simple accident. George Sodder died in 1969 and Jenny died in 1989, and she kept that billboard up on the highway until the day she passed. Their youngest surviving daughter, Sylvia, kept looking for answers even into the 2000s. Like, nobody knows what really happened to Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny Irene, and Betty. Like, no remains were ever confirmed. No case was ever solved. Just a family that spent rest of their lives refusing to stop asking questions because somewhere deep down they believed their kids were still out there. And honestly, given everything we just walked through, the missing ladder, the cut wire, the fake lever, the bones that didn't match, it's really, really hard to believe them. And the thing is, how can a stranger enter the house and just kidnap these 5 kids? I mean, if a stranger enters your house and is trying to kidnap your kids, obviously your kids would scream, right? But there was no screaming that was heard, and well, it's speculated that, well, some people think that maybe the person who is involved in this, that person knew these family well, and even the kids knew that person well, so that when the person entered the house, right, the kids didn't scream, they didn't sense that it was not safe, or like they didn't sense any kind of danger, or maybe the kids were the one who opened the door for them because they knew that person. Or maybe, like, I don't think this one is true, but it is speculated that some people think that parents are involved in some sort of way, which I don't think is true, because if the parents were really involved, I don't think the parents would actually do a lot of, I mean, they did a lot to find their kids, to find answers. And if they were really involved, they would have just gone back to their own lives, right? They wouldn't have looked for answers. They wouldn't have tried to look for answers. I mean, both of them, right? George and Jenny, both of them, they were looking for answers till the day that they died. So I don't think, I mean, if, for example, right, if you're involved in someone's kidnapping, right, or like if you're involved in disappearance of a person, yes, you would pretend to care for them, you would pretend to look for answers, but for a specific period of a time, like let's just say for a year or 2 year or like 3 years, you would pretend that you actually care for them, right? You would pretend to actually look for the answers, but then later on you would go back to your own life, right? So that is how things work. I mean, normally, because you cannot pretend to look for answers when you're the one who's involved in someone's disappearance, right? You wouldn't pretend to look for answers till the day you die, because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of efforts. Emotionally, you're putting a lot. So I don't think that theory is true, but I do believe that someone, or more like a family member, right? Someone from George's side or someone from Jenny's side, maybe they are involved, or like someone the kids are familiar with. Like the kids knew them, the kids, they are familiar with that person, and the kids don't think that they are a danger. That type of a person is involved, because kidnapping 5 kids from a house is not an easy task, especially like if you're an unknown person. I mean, that's just not how things are. But obviously we don't know what really happened, and I don't know if we would ever know what really happened, but we do know one thing, and that is it was something, it was a tragic incident. Like this is very, 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 very tragic. And yes, that is it for today's case. And let me know, what do you think about Sodder child disappearance? And I mean, if you have a theory, let me know in the comments. And if I skipped something, let me know that as well. And I'll meet you in the next one. So till then, take care and spend time with your loved ones. And please, please be alert. Like in this age, yeah, you cannot really trust anyone. So please be alert, and please take care of yourself, and we'll meet next time. Bye bye.